The man instinctively caught the weapon thrown at him, his heart pounding nervously out of control. He never expected his fate to be so bumpy, as if his entire life had been manipulated by capital. The story begins back in 2021, when housing prices in Seoul, South Korea, set new records for 40 consecutive weeks. To counter the soaring prices, the government announced stricter mortgage policies. For those looking to buy, this was the last chance. Miss it, and they might never be able to afford a home in Seoul again. Woo-sung also began thinking about buying a house, but he was just an ordinary office worker. In order to settle in Seoul, he not only had to scrimp and save, but also borrow high-interest loans everywhere, just to barely afford an 84-square-meter apartment. But just as he was about to sign the contract, he learned that within a single hour, the price had already jumped another 10 million won. As Woo-sung hesitated, the agent urged him to decide quickly. After all, he wasn't the only one wanting to buy. In the end, under immense pressure, Woo-sung signed the purchase contract. To gather enough for the down payment, he not only applied for a company loan, but also withdrew his retirement funds early, and even sold farmland from his hometown, all just to have a home in Seoul. Woo-sung dreamed of a happy life ahead, full of hope for the future, but the good times didn't last. By 2024, he realized that the house he had bought for 1.1 billion, won 3 years earlier, had dropped to 800 million. And the monthly loan payments were even more crushing than he had imagined. As a worker with no connections, he was already suffocating under the pressure of the mortgage. But instead of showing sympathy, his boss mocked him, ridiculing Woo-sung for borrowing money to buy a home he couldn't afford, calling it a foolish act of showing off. His colleagues advised him to sell the house quickly, since even his monthly salary wasn't enough to cover the loan. But Woo-sung was afraid that if he sold and the prices went up again, he would end up losing even more. Seeing his difficult situation, one colleague slipped him some money, telling him to at least treat himself to a chicken leg at dinner. Since buying the house, he had lost weight, looked unkempt, and seemed utterly drained. When the workday ended, Woo-sung stayed at his desk, not for overtime, but waiting for everyone to leave so he could secretly charge his small household appliances at the office. He would also sneak snacks and coffee from the break room. When he got home, he found his front door plastered with notes again, asking him to keep quiet since students downstairs were preparing for exams. This left Woo-sung helpless because he never made any noise. He didn't even own a TV. As he tore the notes down, he didn't realize someone in the hallway was secretly watching him. After he entered, noise erupted again from upstairs and he could no longer stand it. Clearly, this wasn't the first time. Woo-sung immediately called property management, asking them to warn the upstairs tenant, and also told them about the repeated notes stuck on his door. Then he changed clothes and went out to deliver food. To pay off the mortgage, Woo-sung had to work part-time jobs no matter if it rained or the wind blew, always running outside. After a tiring night, he returned home to find his door plastered with even more notes, leaving him exhausted and helpless. At home, to save on water bills, he washed clothes with leftover bathwater, never turned on the lights or air conditioning, and didn't even have a bed, completely unlike the happy life he once imagined. In addition, the apartment was always filled with strange noises, keeping him awake every single night. Checking the security cameras, he caught the downstairs neighbor sticking notes on his door again. Woo-sung had explained many times that the noise came from upstairs, but Ju-kyung never believed him. She even threatened that if he made noise again, she would send her husband to deal with him. Woo-sung once again insisted that he had never made any noise, but Ju-kyung ignored him and walked straight into his home. She angrily warned him with a few sharp words, then turned and left. But the moment she left, the noise upstairs started again. Woo-sung couldn't take it anymore. Furious, he stormed to apartment 1501 to confront them. When the door opened, a tall, burly man stepped out, and Woo-sung's courage instantly disappeared. The man's name was Jin Ho. He claimed he hadn't made any noise either, and told Woo-sung to ask the people in 1601 instead before shutting the door. Woo-sung then went upstairs and found that Unit 1601 had noise-proof safety mats installed, making it unlikely to be the source. With no other choice, he climbed up to the 17th floor, but the resident there was an elderly man with mobility issues, barely able to walk, let alone make such noise. The old man, after hearing Woo-sung out, scolded him harshly and told him to take his complaints to the resident's representative before shooing him away. Helpless, Woo-sung went to the top floor to speak with the representative, Yoon-hwa. Yoon-hwa explained that the walls of the entire building were connected, so the noise could even be coming from below. But Woo-sung said he was being wronged because it clearly wasn't him, yet the downstairs neighbor kept blaming him. Yoon-hwa learned that the apartment below Woo-sung was 1301, and immediately told him that it was her property. 1,301 still had 2 months left on the lease, and she said she wouldn't rent it out again afterward, asking him to endure just the last 2 months. She then handed him an envelope filled with money, calling it compensation. Then, she revealed something more serious. According to reliable sources, a new subway line would soon be built, and the station would be right in front of their complex. That meant property values were sure to rise. Therefore, she emphasized, no negative incidents should occur in the building during this time, as it could affect future housing prices. After hearing this insider news, Woo-sung finally felt a little relieved. The next day, a colleague brought him good news, saying that at midnight the virtual currency would drop to 815 won, and after that it would rise again until August 15th, reaching its peak, with returns as high as 9 times the principal. This news left Woo-sung both surprised and thrilled, but at the moment, he had no extra cash to invest. That evening, while delivering food, Woo-sung passed by the real estate office and suddenly had an idea. He would first sell his house but require the buyer to pay an advance deposit of 85 million won, then use the deposit to buy cryptocurrency. And once he made money, he would cancel the housing contract, only paying a penalty fee. Soon, Woo-sung received the deposit, and he rushed home to buy stocks, determined to invest everything at midnight and sell them all on August 15th, securing a big profit. Thinking of this, he could hardly hide his excitement, staring at the computer screen with a smile spreading across his face. The next day, Woo-sung was once again filled with hope for life, cleaning up his messy home until it was spotless. Watching his profits steadily grow, he grinned so wide he could hardly close his mouth. Even the noise from upstairs no longer bothered him. But in the middle of the night, he was jolted awake by loud noises, which seemed to come from downstairs. Jin-ho from upstairs came knocking, demanding that Woo-sung stop making noise. He felt baffled, wondering why both his upstairs and downstairs neighbors thought he was responsible. To prove his innocence, he invited Jin-ho inside to check for himself. But to his dismay, every time someone stepped inside, the noise mysteriously stopped. Frustrated, Jin-ho warned him angrily and left. Yet the moment Jin-ho was gone, the noise started again, as if someone was deliberately toying with him. At that moment, Woo-sung noticed someone downstairs holding up a phone, secretly recording him, so he rushed down to confront Ju-kyung, but she refused to open the door. Helpless, Woo-sung wandered outside to clear his head. The next day, seeing his stocks continue to climb, he was overwhelmed with excitement. Imagining a future free from mortgage stress, Woo-sung finally turned on his air conditioner and allowed himself to relax. That night, the noise grew even louder, and this time his emotions spiraled out of control, the overwhelming sound driving him to the edge. In anger, Woo-sung grabbed a hammer and pounded the floor wildly, trying to warn the neighbors below that he was not to be provoked. Moments later, the doorbell rang, and thinking it was Ju-kyung, he angrily yanked the door open. To his shock, nearly all the neighbors from upstairs and downstairs had gathered outside, leaving him dumbfounded. They accused him of lacking decency, and no matter how he tried to explain, no one believed his words. Eventually, they decided that the property manager and Jin-ho should go inside to investigate, and Woo-sung confidently told them to check anywhere they wanted. But in the next second, the property manager discovered a vibrating machine, and Woo-sung was stunned, not knowing why such a device was in his home, along with a phone apparently used to control noise. At that moment, he spotted his downstairs neighbor, Gwang Cheol, and became convinced that the couple was behind everything, sparking a heated argument. In anger, Gwang Cheol kicked Woo-sung to the ground. Then he stepped forward and did something completely unexpected. In the end, Woo-sung was taken to the police station for questioning. Even though he kept claiming to be the real victim, the evidence was stacked against him, and he couldn't clear his name. Noticing there were only 30 minutes left before it was time to sell his stocks, he faked a stomachache, hoping the police would unlock his cuffs, but before he could escape, he was pinned to the ground. Hearing the commotion, the police chief came out, and Woo-sung's eyes fell on the office computer. Woo-sung quickly logged into his account, preparing to sell the cryptocurrency, but the returns were still a little short of what his colleague had promised. Seeing the police about to break in, he used his body to block the door, hoping to buy himself some time. But a baton struck the back of his head, sending him into a daze. Struggling, he crawled toward the computer. When he woke up again, Yunhua had already taken care of everything, proving that Gwang Cheol hadn't been harmed by him, and Woo-sung was finally released. Back at the complex, banners were hung to celebrate the new subway line, and residents cheered that housing prices would soar. But Woo-sung couldn't share their joy. After returning home, he checked his investment returns and saw that they were negative, Not only had he failed to profit, but he had also lost all his initial capital. Unable to accept this, Woo Sung went to the rooftop, crying bitterly as he wrote a final note. Just as he was about to jump off the balcony, he noticed the lights turning off downstairs. Feeling deeply resentful, Woo Sung picked up a hammer and decided to seek revenge on the couple downstairs. On his way down, he ran into Jin Ho, who still suspected Woo Sung of being the noisemaker. Unable to swallow his anger, Woo Sung turned to fight back, but Jin Ho knocked him down with a single punch, then dragged him home and beat him further. It was only when Jin Ho noticed Woo Sung's pre-written suicide note that he finally realized he had wronged him. Jin Ho sincerely apologized to Woo Sung, and eventually they both turned their attention to the couple downstairs, deciding to work together to uncover the truth behind the noise. Soon the two went downstairs, only to find the door unlocked and the apartment empty. They ransacked the place searching for the machine that made the noise, but found nothing. Fortunately, Woo Sung discovered a property contract, showing that the buyer was none other than Yun Hua from the top floor. Jin Ho also mentioned that his landlord was Yun Hua, and Woo Sung's apartment had been bought by her too. This meant that all the units from the 13th to the 15th floor belonged to Yun Hua. Jin Ho suspected she had quietly acquired other floors too, knowing in advance about the subway project, and had engineered the noise to scare residents away, allowing her to buy cheap and profit later when the prices soared. He proposed that they go together to Yun Hua's home to search for proof. While there, Woo Sung excused himself to the bathroom but actually searched for evidence, while Jin Ho distracted Yun Hua with small talk. But what they didn't know was that Yun Hua's husband was also home, and he caught Woo Sung sneaking around. When discovered, Woo Sung directly asked if they had created the noise to buy the building cheaply. But Ju Ho said they would never stoop to such tricks for that little money. But to Woo Sung, those words were a deep insult because, while it might have been insignificant to them, to him it was everything, his entire fortune and a mountain of debt. As Woo Sung lost control of his emotions, Jin Ho had no choice but to pull him away. After leaving, Woo Sung told Jin Ho everything he saw, mentioning a suspicious iron door with a fingerprint lock inside their home, swearing that he would find another chance to uncover the truth. Jin Ho persuaded him to calm down first, wait until they had a perfect plan before making a move. Then they each went back home to rest. Woo Sung looked at his broken phone with a heavy heart, knowing that fixing it would cost him more money. At that moment, he suddenly noticed the phone he had seen earlier near the vibrating machine, and when he turned it on, he found it was automatically connected to Wi-Fi. To find out whose network it was using, Woo Sung went from door to door testing connections. To his surprise, when he reached Jin Ho's front door, the signal was at full strength. Taking advantage of Jin Ho going to the sauna, Woo Sung secretly stole his house key. Once inside Jin Ho's home, he confirmed that the phone was indeed connected to his Wi-Fi. Not only that, Woo Sung also found that Jin Ho's walls were covered with photos of him and personal information. Clearly, Jin Ho had been intentionally getting close to him. There was also some information about Yun Hua nearby. Woo Sung quickly photographed all the evidence, and in his search, he also discovered a top-level digital hacking device on the desk, which could monitor every resident in the building and even remotely unlock their doors with advanced technology. Seeing this made Woo Sung uneasy, but determined to uncover the truth, he continued searching through Jin Ho's home. Then he discovered that one entire room was filled with vibrating machines. It turned out that Jin Ho was the most dangerous one. Just as Woo Sung was about to leave and expose the truth, Jin Ho suddenly returned home. In a panic, Woo Sung hid inside a closet, which gave him a chance to secretly witness Jin Ho's actions. He saw Jin Ho insert a memory card and export secretly recorded videos, then maliciously edit them until the final product made it look as though Woo Sung wanted revenge on everyone who had wronged him. When the editing was finished, Jin Ho finally went to rest, giving Woo Sung the chance to climb out of the closet. He never imagined that he had become nothing more than a pawn in Jin Ho's plan. Once Jin Ho fell asleep, Woo Sung picked up a hammer to teach him a lesson. But suddenly the doorbell rang, forcing him to quickly hide under the bed. From the voices, Woo Sung realized the visitor was Ju Kyung from downstairs, and their conversation revealed a shocking truth. She was an accomplice of Jin Ho, and she had come to collect her payment. But Ju Kyung complained that the money was too little, and in anger she destroyed the video Jin Ho had spent so much time creating. In a fit of rage, Jin Ho struck Ju Kyung with a hammer, ending her life, then called the police to frame Woo Sung for the crime. Hearing this, Woo Sung knew he couldn't just sit still, but when he tried to leave, he found Jin Ho waiting by the door, never having made the call at all. Jin Ho had known all along that Woo Sung was hiding under the bed, but to make his act more convincing, he had even swung the hammer against his own head. He then explained his motives. He had once been a TV investigative journalist, and in his secret digging he discovered that Yun Hua, the top-floor resident, was in charge of the building, embezzling funds and cutting corners on construction. He had intended to expose her, but she found out, got his program canceled, and even hired someone to stab him. Yet despite everything, Jin-ho never gave up, moving into the apartment to keep gathering evidence. He chose Woo-sung as his tool because he was the most suitable candidate, a man crushed by debt and noise complaints, who would in the end lose control and stir up chaos. Woo-sung was furious but powerless against Jin-ho, and in the end he had no choice but to beg for mercy, offering to help expose Eunhwa's true face. To prove his loyalty, Woo-sung proposed a plan. Together, they carried Ju-kyung's body to the top floor. While Eunhwa and her husband were asleep, they placed plastic bags over their heads, tied them up, and forced Eunhwa to hand over the account books documenting the embezzlement. She claimed it was in the safe, but when Jin-ho opened it, all he found was cash. So in anger, he slapped Eunhwa hard. Unable to watch, Woo-sung tried to strike from behind, but Jin-ho saw through him immediately. While they fought, Eunhwa secretly freed herself, grabbed an air gun, and aimed it at Jin-ho. Her husband Ju-ho joined in, trying to finish Jin-ho off, but he was quickly killed instead, though he managed to stab Jin-ho before collapsing. Seeing this, Eunhwa urged Woo-sung to kill Jin-ho, promising she would testify it was self-defense. But Woo-sung wanted to leave everything to the police. Seeing his reluctance, Eunhwa struck him down to the ground with a golf club. Looking at the fallen men, Eunhwa sneered that she should move somewhere better, otherwise she would always end up surrounded by troublesome neighbors. She boasted that no one would guess she had hidden the ledger inside a magazine. But in her arrogance, she didn't notice that Jin-ho, who wasn't completely dead, had gotten back up. In the end, Eunhwa was strangled to death by Jin-ho. At that moment, Woo-sung painfully dragged himself up and flipped open the magazine, finding not only property contracts, but also records of Eunhwa's embezzlement. He found his own house contract among them, and burned it together with the ledger. As if the sale had never happened, his house was once again his own. At the end of the story, Woo-sung handed the evidence he had gathered from Jin-ho's home to the prosecutor. But since the ledger had been destroyed, there wasn't enough proof to convict Eunhwa, and with her already dead, the case was closed without result. Woo-sung no longer wished to be involved. He only wanted to return home, hoping to live quietly from then on. That was the full story of the 2025 Korean thriller 84 Jegopmiteo. This film uses noise as a needle to puncture South Korea's housing anxiety and capital alienation. Director Kim Tae-joon employs cold aesthetics and ensemble performances to elevate everyday conflicts into a critique of class. Despite pacing issues and some flat characters, its precise capture of social pain points and genre innovation made it a dark horse in Korea's 2025 film market. Highly recommended for viewers interested in social realism and suspense, especially urban audiences who resonate deeply with housing struggles and neighborly conflicts. That's it for today's review. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.